All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Ryan Tackaberry, the Digital Services Librarian for the Genesee District Library, and I am here with two of our librarians on this side. It's always weird. I'm always confused which way to point. Uh, Chris and Sherry, and we're here to talk about some of the books that they've been reading recently and what they recommend, what they like to read, and what they haven't liked to read recently. And we'll start in just a second. As always, if you are watching from home, please feel free to leave a message in the comments. Let us know if you've read any of these books. Let us know if you have any questions about them, or just let us know what you've been reading. You can, as always, go to our website, thegdl.org, and look at all of our upcoming events, both in person and virtual, and see all kinds of other great stuff there. Okay, with that being said, we'll get started. I think, Chris, we'll start off with you. Do you have a book that you want to talk about first?
I sure do. And I'm going to just kind of preface today with I selected books from 3 different categories today: junior fiction, teen fiction, and adult fiction, to kind of like highlight our summer reading challenge that is available for all the patrons of all the age groups. Join us at Beanstack to get signed up and record what you're reading. And that's my little plug. So my book today is Otter by Katherine Applegate. This is a fictional story that's junior fiction, and it's based on the real-life Monterey Bay Aquarium in California. It has a program at the aquarium that pairs orphaned otter pups with surrogate mothers. This book for junior fiction is written in verse. It's for what I'd say is the upper elementary crowd. We follow the life of Otter. That's the main character, the sea otter, from her infancy with her mother that she's born to. The story follows her all the way through her time as when she becomes a surrogate otter mom. It's a quick and enjoyable read. It's written in prose, so I learned a lot about sea otters in this incredibly creative fictional story. It wasn't like cumbersome learning. It was interesting and factual and fun. The story is told from Otter's point of view. Otter has many adventures, from facing a great white shark to learning how to deal with humans who are trying to help her. I think this book is just absolutely darling. I loved every minute of it. It's stayed with me for weeks now. I read it a while ago. Honestly, I can't stop talking about it to people. So I would say read this if you're an adult. If you're an adult who isn't into reading kids' books, give it to the kids that you know that love animals or the ocean. This is a 5-star book, hands down.
What do you think has made it stick with you so much over this, the last few weeks?
I think for me, it is the fact that it combined facts with fiction, with this lovable, adorable animal, written in prose. I mean, it was out of something unique that I haven't come across before, and I think that's why that's stayed with me.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Chris. All right, Sherry, what do you want to talk about first? What's your first book?
My first book is Angels of the Resistance by Noelle Salazar. It's historical fiction. So Leanne lives with her mother and her older sister, Alif, I think is how you say it, in Haarlem in the Netherlands. Their father passed away, and they're also still recovering from another family tragedy when World War II starts. They believe, as many of the Dutch did, that they will remain neutral as they did in World War I. Unfortunately, Germany invades the Netherlands, and they're forced to witness their friends and their neighbors being taken from their homes, and some of them killed right on the streets in front of them. So a family friend recruits Alif into the resistance. And after finding out that her sister Leanne's an excellent shot, she's recruited as well. So together, the sisters, along with a small group of teens who participate in everything from forging documents to moving Jewish families to safe houses to actually killing targets. So I've read a lot of historical fiction that takes place in World War II, and I've probably talked about a lot of it here too. But I haven't read any that focuses on the Netherlands in specifically. I thought the book had amazing character building and a lot of heart-pounding action for historical fiction. It doesn't sugarcoat the sisters' feelings about taking lives, even though they know it's for the greater good. And the author actually got inspired by the story of two real-life teen sisters, Truce and Freddie Overstegen, and she based this sisters in this book on them. After realizing that, I did do a little bit of reading on the two sisters, and they're actually pretty fascinating themselves. So this is definitely a good one if you want a different take on World War II.
People who watch this show with us or know you, as you mentioned, you read a lot of historical fiction, and they know that.
Yes.
You mentioned how this is kind of a different one because you haven't read a lot about historical fiction in the Netherlands. Is
Right.
there anything else that kind of makes this stand out from other historical fiction that you've read?
I think for me, the fact that it was two teenage girls, I mean, they were assassinating people. They were luring people out. And they were very young teens. I want to say like maybe 14 and 16. And then they had other teenagers that were also working with them too. And so it's just kind of amazing that they could even do that, because as a teenager, I don't think I would have been able to do that.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Sherry. What do you want to talk about next, Chris?
The next one I'm going to talk about is The Davenports by Crystal Marquis. Giving a little French spin on her last name. Hope I said it right. This book is cataloged in our teen fiction collection. However, I think it is a crossover title that also appeals to adults. It's historical fiction set in Chicago in 1910. It is the first book of a planned series. I tried to see if there was a expected date for book 2, but I couldn't find one. So it's the story of the Davenports, who are an African-American family of immense wealth. We're introduced to their two daughters, Olivia and Helen, and they are like night and day in their personalities. And we follow their daily lives from how they interact with each other to what they are striving for, in their life. So I would say it's the beginning of their coming of age story for each girl. We're also introduced to two secondary characters, Amy Rose, who is a servant to the Davenports and who has ambitions of her own, and Ruby, who is Olivia's best friend. So the story kind of follows all four girls in what they are and their kind of coming of age. So as I had mentioned, it's billed as historical fiction. It reads very much like a romance. Overall, I thought it was interesting, and it really was probably the last quarter of the book where I became more interested in the characters. And it was at that point that I reconsidered seeking out the second book when it is released. But prior to that point, I wasn't so sure I cared enough about them to keep reading a second book. The author's note at the end provides the historical inspiration for the story, and it's based on C.R. Patterson and Sons. They were a carriage company founded in 1893, and that's who the fictional Davenports are based on.
What do you think makes a book have that kind of crossover appeal that for a variety of ages?
So I think it's because potentially, specifically probably for this book, is the characters aren't in school. So they don't scream modern day teenager, even though they are teens in this story. They're doing things that like our probably college age students would be doing if you compare compared them. So.
Right. All right, cool. Sherry, what is your second book tonight?
My second book is Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati, which I hope I'm saying that right. It's a mythological retelling, and it's a debut. And I think it's an impressive debut in this time when mythological retellings are numerous. I've read some good ones and I've read some bad ones, and this is one of my favorites. And it reframes the story of Clytemnestra with a feminist perspective. So in the old version, she was notorious and reviled, we'll say kind of evil is how she's portrayed. She killed her husband and then ruled with his cousin who had been her lover. So that's basically the old story. This book starts with her life in Sparta with her brothers and sisters. She is the sister of Helen of Troy. So you get a little bit of Helen's perspective as well. And it goes through to the murder of Agamemnon, who was her husband. You'll empathize with her plight as a woman of ancient Greece who's having to constantly cede to the men in her life and never being seen for how brilliant and fierce she actually is. Her father basically chose her husband. She didn't get much of a say in it. If you know the mythology, you also know her husband had their daughter killed for improved wind, I believe, on their way for a war. So she has a lot of rage about this, and that's kind of what leads to Agamemnon's murder. And I feel like this book would have been more highly recognized because it is so good, but the publication date had to be changed because an actual truck fire destroyed every copy of the book. So it ended up taking like maybe 3 or 4 months to get them all reprinted and back. And it had been getting a lot of kind of press and publicity. And I think the changing of the publication date just kind of dwindled it down. But if you like mythological retellings, this is one of the best ones I think I've ever read.
That's an interesting story in itself about the truck fire. That's
yes.
wild. Wow. So you said it's one of the best ones that you read, and that it's kind of a very popular sort of genre right now, the mythological retellings. When I saw it and I was looking at it, it made me think of the book Circe.
Yes.
Which I know a lot of our librarians have read and really enjoyed. How do you compare those two?
I liked Circe, but I actually think I liked this one better.
Okay. That sounds like pretty high praise then. Cool. Thank you, Sherry. All right, Chris, what's your last book for today?
My last book is the adult fiction that I selected, and it is Go as a River by Shelley Reed. This is also historical fiction. It's set on a peach farm in Colorado. It takes place mostly in the 1940s and the 1950s. A lot of the description says if you liked Where the Crawdads Sing, you might like this book. I'm not sure I'd put it quite in the same category. And I'll talk about that, a little bit as we go. So it is the coming of age story of 17-year-old Victoria Nash, who lives on the peach farm with her family of troubled men, her dad, her brother, her uncle. Her uncle is a survivor of, he was in an accident. I was going to say a war, but I'm not sure which war it would have been. Gosh, the Civil War, maybe. I'm not positive on that, but anyway, so a chance encounter with a transient youth changes Victoria's life path. And this just sets her down a different path than what she had envisioned for herself. The book is inspired by the true events surrounding the destruction of the town of Iola. And the author touches on that a little bit in the book. It's a debut novel that I thought is exquisite in its writing. I absolutely loved the way it was written. I'm more of the mind of, if you have ever read Once Upon a River, that this is more like that story than Where the Crawdads Sing. It's a little bit less gritty than Once Upon a River, but it does have moments where you're just kind of like, oh, do I want to keep reading? But because it definitely has a somber, you got to make it by your bootstraps kind of feel to it.
Is there another book you read recently that you would compare this to?
That I read recently.
Maybe not recently. It doesn't have to be recently.
Oh,
Maybe another popular book people know about. I don't know.
yeah, because Once Upon a River is probably not popular. I think my book club read it, more than 5 years ago. So, maybe they know Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward. It's not quite as gritty as that, but it's kind of got that socioeconomic feel to it, I guess, if
Sure.
you will. So.
All right. Thank you, Chris. All right, Sherry, what's your last book for today?
So my last book is Family Game by Catherine Steadman. It's a psychological suspense, maybe psychological thriller, I guess. So Harriet Reed she's sort of a semi-famous mystery novelist, and she's newly engaged to a very handsome tech entrepreneur named Edward Holbeck. And Edward himself is the son of a prominent wealthy family. So think like an eccentric version of the Kennedys. So he's estranged from his family, but they're trying to bring him back to be closer to his family. So Harriet is kind of encouraging this a little bit. So they have Thanksgiving dinner with the family, and during that Thanksgiving dinner, Edward's father, Robert, gives her a tape that he claims is his attempt at a mystery novel. So once Harriet starts to listen to it, she starts to wonder if it's a confession to several murders instead. Robert also tells her that he knows a secret that she's desperate to keep hidden about her past. So she becomes obsessed with finding out the truth, especially after they have a few family parties that are disturbing and dangerous, including one that just disturbed me so greatly as to why any family would do this to their children. It was just confusing. So then once Harriet becomes pregnant, then the stakes become even higher, and she's not sure who she can trust. So this one's full of twists that I didn't see coming, and other people I've talked to that have read it also didn't see coming. And it actually kept me up all night, not because it was so scary, just because I was desperate to see what happened next. And the creepy party has something to do with Krampus, and it's super creepy. I don't know why any family would think this was okay.
I like creepy. I think it's hard to pull off in a book too. I think that's really interesting. It's funny. This kind of makes me think of the Plot? Is that one that came out recently? I feel like there's a lot of books recently that are like involve like a book manuscript or as like a plot device in the book.
Yeah, definitely.
Might be another trend. Who would you recommend this for?
Anyone who really likes twisted psychological thrillers.
Okay. I think there's probably a lot of people out there who would enjoy that.
It might be perfect around October too, but I like my thrillers in the summer.
If you do read it, let us know what you think about it. Those are all the books we're here to talk about today. Sherry or Chris, do you have any parting words you want to say to people before we go? I think Chris had the great plug for the Summer Reading Challenge, which you can still sign up for, and there's lots of great prizes. And
we should probably do a plug for the road trip too.
That's good. I haven't talked about that. That's really exciting. If you are looking for something to do this summer, you can come to each of our 19 branches and get a GDL trading card for that branch by answering a little trivia question about the branch. Once you get all 19, there's a little kind of a puzzle you can solve, and there's a bonus 20th card. And so you can get that, collect your favorite cards from your favorite GDL branches, or go all over the county, visit them all. And they're really awesome looking. It's a lot of fun. So take a look at that. And again, the Summer Reading Challenge, any of these books we talked about today, those all count. Any books you want to read can count. So any books, it's for all ages. You can be reading to your small child, or just reading yourself, or your children can be reading, and you can have chances to win lots of prizes. So that's Still lots of time to sign up for that. You can do that on our website or go to thegdl.org/beanstack and read all about it there. All right. With that being said, we will sign off for now. Thank you so much for watching, and we will be back next month. We will see you then.
All right. See you everyone in August.